Happy Tuesday to you. It's time for ELA again. We're still looking at the story in the days of King Adobe today. So let's just review the vocabulary. I know you practiced it yesterday, but you're also going to see it today on our little in the days of King Adobe quiz. I'll put the vocabulary on there with some questions from the story. So make sure you got these words down. Thrifty, thrifty. If you're thrifty, you save your money and buy only what you need. In other words, you don't waste money and you try to save your money. Like the woman in the story was thrifty. She would save a penny a day, a penny a day, a penny a day, it said. And little by little, she got enough to buy her ham by being thrifty. You may not get it right away, but if you're thrifty, you're going to save that money, looking for a sale, if you're shopping, and save that money and being able to use it for something later by being thrifty. Generous, someone is generous. He or she gives more than is necessary. Remember in our story, the lady had been thrifty and saved for a ham. And for the guest, remember she cut two big thick slices of ham for those two guests that she had and cut a thin slice for herself. She was very generous in what she gave them to eat, even though they were going to steal it. Character, a person's character is the kind of person he or she is. Well, though the story called the two men that visited her rascals, they were mean, weren't they? They were thieves. They weren't kind at all. They weren't thankful that she fed them or let them sleep in her house. They stole from her or tried to because they didn't have a good character. They had a bad character. But what about her? She had a great character, didn't she? She let the two men sleep on her. She made a bed for them on the floor. They slept in her house, and she fed them both dinner and breakfast. And she taught them a lesson too, didn't she? She could have turned them into the police, I guess, but instead she taught them a lesson by putting the brick in the bag and taking the ham out. Fascinated? If you're fascinated by something, you're very interested in it. I think the old lady in the story was fascinated by dreams, she said. So she was interested in their dreams. Of course, we know why, because they were being silly and being mean and making fun of her. She knew exactly what they were talking about. So thrifty, generous, character, and fascinated. All right, let's look at a vocabulary strategy real quick. This is one we worked with a couple weeks ago with analogies. So we did a whole assignment on analogies. I'm not going to have you do one today, but let's look at these together real quickly and see if we can come up with a word that would go in these blanks here. So remember, an analogy is a comparison of two sets of words. Each set of words has a similar relationship. The two sets are connected by the word as. To complete an analogy, choose a word to put in the blank that has the same relationship as the first set of words. Okay, so big is to little as blank is to stingy. Okay, think of our vocabulary words. Big and little are opposites. Stingy means you don't give anything away. Which one of our vocabulary words is the opposite of stingy? It's generous, isn't it? If you're generous, you give more than you need to. So big is to little as generous is to stingy. Kind is to nice as tardy is to what? Well, what are kind and nice? They're synonyms, aren't they? They mean the same, have the same meaning. What means the same as being tardy? It means you're late. If you come tardy to school, you're late. So kind is to nice as tardy is to late. Thrifty is to spend as blank is to last. So if you're thrifty, you save. So saving and spending are what? They're opposites. So we're looking for an opposite word. Thrifty is to spend as, what's the opposite of last? First, right? As first is to last. Thrifty is to spend as first is to last. And then state is to country as blank is to hour. What? That's a hard one. State is to country. How are those two words related? Well, a country is made up of states, right? So in our country, we have 50 states. Okay, what is an hour made up of? Minutes, right? It's 60 minutes in an hour. So state is to country as minute is to hour. Got that? All righty. Well, let's talk about one more literary device called theme. We've talked about it a bunch this year. And so I want to read through this and let's talk about the theme of In the Days of King Adobe. The theme is the main message, lesson, or moral of the text. So we talked about how the folk tales, like In the Days of King Adobe, always has a moral to the story. So we'll talk about that in a minute. The theme can be stated in the text. Fables and myths might tell the theme at the end. The theme can be implied. Use text clues to figure it out. What happens to the characters? How do the characters react? What do the characters learn? And how do the characters grow and change? What is the author trying to teach me? So examples of themes are more can be achieved by working together. It's best to tell the truth. And don't give up. So let's go through these questions right here. See if we can come up with a theme for In the Days of King Adobe. What happens to the characters? Well, they try to steal a ham, but they end up getting tricked and actually steal a brick. How did they react? Well, they didn't really get mad. They were kind of sad because they were going to be hungry now, right? But what did they learn? Well, it did say that they visited another old lady later, and they didn't even think about stealing from her. So they learned that stealing was wrong. How did the characters grow or change? Well, maybe they learned to do what's right. So what kind of theme? What do you think the author's trying to teach us in the Days of King Adobe? Yeah, don't steal. Appreciate a nice person. What else do you think could be a theme? We said yesterday, what goes around comes around. They tried to steal the ham, and she stole the ham back and put a brick in their bag. So what else could be a theme of that story? Can you think of something else? Kindness counts. She was very kind. And yeah. So anyway, we can come up with different themes for stories in the Days of King Adobe. You might can think of your own. Share it with me in our Google Meet if you think you have a really good one for our story that we read yesterday and that you're going to read today. So what I want you to do today, we read it together yesterday. I want you to find, it would be great to read it to mom or dad. If they'll let you read this story to you, it's not real long. So if you'll read it to them, tell them, Mom, Dad, it's about 6 or 7 pages. Can I read it to you? I want to see if you can figure out the theme. So read your parents or grandparents In the Days of King Adobe. It starts on 103 and goes through 109 in your book. Read it to your parents or grandparents and see if they can figure out the theme of the story. See if they can figure out the moral of the story. Maybe they'll come up with a good one that you can tell me what your parents said in our Google Meet today, okay? All right, so that's your assignment today. We're not going to read it together. I want you to read the story to your parents. Also, you'll have another abbreviations assignment today. And then finally, you'll have a short little quiz on this story. So make sure you read it again because you're going to have a quiz on it. And it will have some vocabulary words in it in the quiz as well. Okay, I'll let you get started reading. Tell me what your parents think the moral of the story is in our Google Meet today, okay? All right, go get started.